Layla survived a corrupt pact by severing her bond and building a bulletproof logistics empire. As head event planner for the decade's biggest supernatural summit, she is prepared for any disaster, except the scent of roasted coffee and worn leather sweeping under her office door. Mate. Panic short-circuits her pragmatic brain. Knowing the approaching Alpha King of the Northern Territories could ruin her carefully rebuilt life, Layla abandons her professional dignity and dives straight under her massive, solid oak desk. It's a flawless tactical retreat until the heavy footsteps stop, inches away. He doesn't bark a terrifying command. Instead, the fearsome king casually lifts the 300-pound desk into the air with one hand, looks down at her mortified face, and smirks. Peekaboo. Welcome back to Lena's Romantasy Collection, the home of sharp-witted heroines and the alphas who would move mountains or mahogany desks just to see them smile. Quick question for the collection before we dive into today's chaos. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city in the comments, and if you have a pet currently judging your taste in alphas, just like Spike the cat, be sure to drop a black cat emoji so we can compare notes. Today, we have a story that is as funny as it is electric. It involves a very pragmatic Delta with a clipboard and an alpha king who thinks the best way to say hello is by lifting a 300-pound desk into the air. But before Gideon says peekaboo, if you want to support our empire and get early access to new batches of stories, hit that join button down below. Your membership keeps our lights on and ensures the stories keep coming. Now, take a deep breath. The Alpha King is looking, and Layla has nowhere left to hide. Let's read. Chapter 1. Are we entirely sure the floral vendor isn't running a clandestine smuggling ring on the side? Layla asked, her fingers tightly gripping the edges of her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard. She paced the length of her temporary summit office, a sprawling room adjacent to the main ballroom of Cresthaven Peaks. Cody leaned against a filing cabinet, flipping through a stack of invoices. He tapped his foot against the carpeted floor, a nervous habit that always surfaced when the budget ran thin. Unless they are smuggling incredibly rare orchids, I think we are just dealing with a standard markup, Layla. It's a supernatural council summit. Everything has a premium. If this event goes sideways, we'll be living out of my plum-colored sedan, Layla thought, pressing 2 fingers to her temple to ward off an impending headache. She adjusted the lapels of her tailored, breathable workwear. The dark gray fabric was specifically designed for the endless walking required to manage a grand ballroom. A premium is one thing. This floral budget is a financially crippling gamble. It completely drained our operational accounts for the quarter. We invoked a severance clause to get here, Cody reminded her gently, his optimistic tone a stark contrast to her mounting anxiety. Buying our freedom from the Red Creek Pack wasn't cheap, but we survived it. We will survive some overpriced lilies. She's going to stress herself into an early grave before the guests even arrive, Cody mused internally, watching his sister carefully. I need to get her a strong cup of tea. Before Layla could respond, a sharp clatter echoed through the room. Spike, her notoriously mischievous domestic cat, had scaled the nearby credenza. With a flick of his tail and an air of absolute indifference, the feline casually batted a silver letter opener onto the hardwood floor. Spike, I am begging you to find a hobby that doesn't involve property damage, Layla sighed, walking over to retrieve the fallen item. She placed it securely inside her tote bag, ensuring the cat couldn't launch another attack. Spike merely blinked, demanding a treat with a soft, raspy meow. I'll take the remaining vendor contracts down to the loading dock, Cody said, gathering his paperwork. Try to breathe, Layla. The venue looks spectacular. Thank you, Cody. Have your earpiece on standby. Once the heavy suite door clicked shut behind her brother, silence settled over the office. Layla turned toward her massive, solid oak desk to review the seating chart one last time. Then it hit her. It wasn't a sound. It was a scent. A rich, grounding wave of roasted coffee beans, intricately woven with the distinct aroma of worn leather. It swept under the doorframe, instantly overwhelming her own natural fragrance of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar. Layla froze. Her breath hitched. Her wolf surged forward in her mind, completely unprompted, howling a singular, terrifying truth of recognition. Mate. Chapter 2. Panic, sharp and unforgiving, flooded Layla's veins. It wasn't the thrill of romance. It was a sudden, icy jolt cascading down her spine. Her heart drummed a frantic, bruising rhythm against her ribs. Why do I always attract the complicated ones? Layla thought frantically, her hand shaking slightly as she placed her acrylic clipboard flat onto the oak desk. She knew exactly who that scent belonged to. Gideon, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, was scheduled to tour the facility today. Out of all the powerful, imposing men in the supernatural community, fate had decided to tether her to the absolute apex predator. Her mind instantly flashed back to her previous alpha, Trenton, and the ruinous price she had paid to escape his control. The idea of being magically bound to another monarch triggered every survival instinct she possessed. The heavy footsteps in the corridor grew louder. They were measured, deliberate, and entirely too close. I cannot do this today. I cannot smile and shake hands with the man who could ruin my carefully rebuilt life. Layla reasoned, her pragmatic mind short-circuiting under the primal pressure of the mate bond. In a moment of pure, unfiltered desperation, Layla abandoned all her polished professionalism. She dropped to her knees on the plush carpet. Gripping the edge of her tailored slacks, she shimmied directly under the center cavity of her massive, solid oak office desk. She pulled her legs in tight, wrapping her arms around her knees, and prayed the shadows would conceal her. This is officially the most humiliating Tuesday of my entire existence, she muttered to herself, her voice barely a whisper in the confined space. Spike the cat, who had been lounging on a nearby velvet armchair, hopped down. He trotted over to the desk, poked his head underneath, and stared at Layla with blatant feline judgment. Don't look at me like that, Layla hissed quietly at the cat. I am executing a tactical retreat. The brass handle of her office door turned with a decisive click. The hinges swung open, and the scent of roasted coffee and leather intensified, filling every corner of the room. Layla squeezed her eyes shut, hoping against hope that he was just briefly inspecting the room and would leave. Just walk away. Please just verify the room is empty and go check the catering hall. Layla pleaded silently. Instead, the steady rhythmic sound of highly polished leather shoes stepped over the threshold. They paused just inside the doorway. A low, rich hum vibrated through the air as the Alpha King registered the undeniable scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar lingering in the enclosed space. He hadn't just found the event planner's office, he had found her. Chapter 3. Gideon stood just inside the doorway, the sharp lines of his charcoal-toned suit catching the muted light of the office. He possessed a jawline with the unforgiving angles of a struck match, and right now it was locked in rigid surprise. Well, this is entirely unexpected, Gideon thought, his gaze sweeping the seemingly empty room. My mate is in here, yet she is nowhere to be seen. Is she a spy? An assassin? He flared his nostrils, tracking the vibrant scent of apricots and cedar. It didn't lead toward the grand windows or the adjoining closet. The invisible trail led directly to the center of the room, pooling distinctly beneath the massive solid oak desk. Gideon tilted his head, a lively spark of amusement breaking through his normally stoic demeanor. He carried the heavy burdens of his crown with quiet dignity every single day, enduring endless meetings and sycophantic politicians. Finding his fated mate hiding like a startled field mouse was the most entertaining thing that had happened to him in a decade. From beneath the desk, Layla watched a pair of impeccably shined leather shoes walk slowly across the carpet. They stopped mere inches from her hiding spot. She held her breath, entirely frozen. Perhaps if I remain perfectly still, his alpha vision is based on movement, Layla thought, her pragmatic brain grasping at utterly ridiculous theories to delay the inevitable. Gideon didn't bark in order. He didn't use an oppressive alpha command to drag her out. Instead, he reached down. Layla watched a large hand, adorned with a heavy royal signet ring on the right index finger, firmly grip the thick wooden edge of her desk. With a casual, terrifying display of raw supernatural strength, Gideon lifted the entire, several hundred-pound piece of solid oak straight into the air with a single hand. He held it suspended effortlessly, entirely removing her wooden shield. Layla blinked against the sudden exposure to the overhead lights. She looked up. Towering above her, Gideon looked down. His expression was a perfect portrait of quiet nobility, save for the gentle, entirely charmed smirk playing at the corners of his mouth.
Peekaboo.
The Alpha King said, his voice a deep, resonant rumble that sent a thrilling shiver straight down her spine. Spike, entirely unfazed by the floating furniture, used the opportunity to saunter directly between Gideon's polished shoes, demanding a petting from the monarch. Layla sat frozen on the carpet, staring up at the man holding her office decor hostage, realizing her tactical retreat had failed spectacularly. Chapter 4. The silence in the room stretched, thick with tension and the combined scents of coffee and apricots. Gideon held the heavy desk aloft, waiting for the traditional response. Most wolves would grovel, bare their throats, or stammer out a terrified apology when faced with a king. She is so fiercely beautiful, Gideon observed internally, his eyes tracing the elegant twist of her hair and the practical cut of her dark gray workwear. Now she will likely apologize and tremble. They always tremble. Layla did not tremble. Drawing a deep breath, she smoothly pushed herself up from the carpet. She took a moment to brush an invisible speck of dust from her slacks, her posture straightening into a line of absolute professional defiance. Treat him like a vendor, Layla coached herself fiercely. A very large, extremely intimidating vendor who can lift furniture like it's made of cardboard. While I appreciate a thorough structural inspection of the venue's furnishings, Your Majesty, Layla said, her voice remarkably steady. I would greatly appreciate it if you put my desk back. We have a rather strict schedule to maintain. Gideon blinked. The gentle smirk vanished, replaced by genuine shock. Slowly, he lowered the massive solid oak desk back onto the carpet, ensuring it landed exactly on its previous indentations without a single sound.
You are the head planner,
Gideon stated, his deep voice carrying a note of newfound respect.
Layla,
Free Delta and owner of this logistics firm, she replied. She reached down, smoothly retrieving her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard from the desktop where she had left it earlier. She pulled a printed itinerary from beneath the metal clip and extended her arm, holding the paper out to him. If you are looking for a tour, the southern wing is prepared for your security detail, she continued briskly. Please review these protocols. The perimeter checks are required by 3 o'clock. Gideon stared at the clipboard, then at her. He reached out, his fingers briefly brushing hers. A sharp jolt of electricity sparked between them, causing both to subtly inhale. He took the paper. She didn't flinch. She handed me a chore, Gideon realized, his chest expanding with an unexpected surge of joy. Astounding. I will review them immediately, Layla, he promised softly, committing the exact sound of her name to memory. Without demanding a bow, the Alpha King turned and exited the office, leaving the door perfectly intact. As his footsteps faded, Layla sank into her velvet armchair, finally letting out a long, shaky exhale. She had survived the first encounter, but she knew the real challenge had only just begun. Chapter 5. The grand ballroom of Cresthaven Peaks hummed with the vibrant energy of 300 arriving delegates. Layla stood near the eastern archway, pressing 2 fingers against her customized Summit earpiece to muffle the ambient noise. Her dark gray workwear allowed her to blend seamlessly into the bustling environment, a deliberate tactical choice she often relied upon. Cody, please confirm the floral arrangements are secure, Layla murmured, her eyes continuously scanning the crowded floor.
Secure and looking excessively luxurious, Cody's lively voice crackled back through the earpiece. Also, you have a very large shadow tracking your movements. The king is approaching from 12 o'clock.
He is absolutely relentless, Layla thought, a sudden flush of warmth rising to her pale cheeks. I am trying to run a highly demanding logistical operation, and he is playing an aristocratic game of hide and seek. Gideon's imposing figure effortlessly parted the sea of supernatural diplomats. His tailored, charcoal-toned suit moved with fluid grace. The comforting scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather drifted over the crowd, a clear warning of his approach. Instead of holding her ground, Layla executed a crisp pivot, sliding her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard securely against her side. She vanished down a restricted service corridor before he could bridge the gap. For the next 2 hours, the summit transformed into a highly sophisticated game of evasion. Whenever Gideon casually strolled toward the main registration tables, Layla was miraculously required at the audio-visual control booth. When he attended the opening brunch buffet, she suddenly discovered a critical error in the coat check room that required her immediate attention. She professionally outmaneuvered him at every turn, relying entirely on her intimate knowledge of the labyrinthine venue. She moves like a phantom through these halls. Gideon mused internally, politely nodding at a chatty ambassador while keeping a sharp eye on the swinging service doors. It is profoundly frustrating, yet I cannot deny how incredibly impressive it is. However, I will not be ignored all day. The elaborate game finally concluded in the secluded catering wing. Layla had ducked inside the preparation area to inspect the pastry platters, assuming she was entirely safe amidst the clattering silver trays and busy kitchen staff. The heavy metallic doors pushed open, and Gideon stepped inside, instantly filling the narrow aisle with his towering frame. Layla froze, her fingers hovering inches from a tray of delicate fruit tarts. "You are an exceptionally difficult woman to locate," Gideon stated, his voice a rich, resonant rumble that carried over the kitchen noise. He stepped forward, deliberately positioning himself to block the primary exit. "I am working, Your Majesty," Layla replied smoothly. She turned to face him, tightly gripping her acrylic clipboard as a protective barrier. "The logistics of this summit require my constant, undivided vigilance. I am demanding exactly 5 minutes of your time," Gideon countered gently. His gaze swept over her, taking in her secure, elegant hair twist and defiant posture. No earpiece, no running away down secret hallways. If I refuse him, he might decide to lift another massive piece of furniture just to prove a point, Layla reasoned, letting out a soft, resigned sigh. She raised a finger and tapped her earpiece. "Cody, I am stepping off the grid for precisely 5 minutes. Monitor the southern entrance." She dropped her hand and looked up at the Alpha King, her expression guarded but curious. 5 minutes, she agreed, her voice steady. "The clock is officially ticking. What is it that requires the immediate attention of the event planner?" "I sincerely doubt you followed me into the kitchens to discuss the seating arrangements for the evening gala." Gideon offered a devastatingly handsome smile, leaning casually against a stainless steel prep counter. "Actually, Layla, I came to discuss you." Chapter 6. "Discuss me?" Layla echoed, her eyebrows raised in mild disbelief. She adjusted her grip on her acrylic clipboard, ensuring it remained squarely between them. "I am a Free Delta organizing a major summit. There is nothing remotely interesting about me to discuss." "I strongly disagree," Gideon replied, his tone conversational yet intensely focused. The scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather wrapped around her, steadying her racing pulse despite her best efforts to resist it. He didn't push into her personal space, he merely observed her. "You managed to evade me for 2 hours. You command a room without raising your voice. And yesterday, you chose to hide under a desk rather than greet me. You are a fascinating contradiction." He notices entirely too much, Layla thought, maintaining her intense, unblinking stare to evaluate his honesty. I need to steer this conversation back to strictly professional matters before he uncovers my actual insecurities. "I assure you, hiding under the desk was merely a spontaneous architectural inspection," Layla said smoothly, employing her wit as a familiar shield. "As for the rest, it is simply good business. Surviving in this industry requires a certain level of tactical awareness." Gideon chuckled, a warm sound that briefly softened the sharp angles of his jawline. "Tactical awareness, is that what you call running from your mate?" The word hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. Layla stiffened, her posture turning rigid. "We are not having this conversation. I am a severed wolf running a logistics firm. I do not have the time or the inclination to entertain a biological bond with a reigning monarch. My life is complicated enough." She is terrified of the power dynamic, Gideon realized internally, catching the brief flash of vulnerability in her eyes before she masked it. "I must tread carefully. I want a partner, not a frightened subject." "I am not asking you to entertain anything, Layla," Gideon said softly, holding his hands up in a gesture of peace. "I merely want to know the woman who orchestrated this entire event. I want to know why she prefers the scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar over the usual floral perfumes." Before Layla could formulate a suitably deflective response, a soft thud echoed from the adjacent prep table. Spike, the exceptionally nimble feline, had somehow bypassed the kitchen staff. He sat casually beside a stack of folded linen napkins. The feline blinked his bright eyes, focusing entirely on Gideon's right hand resting near the table's edge. Specifically, Spike was staring at the heavy royal signet ring gleaming on the king's index finger. "Spike, no," Layla warned, immediately recognizing the predatory gleam in the cat's eyes. It was too late. With astonishing speed and impeccable comedic timing, Spike darted forward. The cat hooked a single claw under the slightly loose band of the signet ring, yanked it cleanly off Gideon's finger, and clamped the shiny object firmly between his teeth. Gideon stared at his suddenly bare hand, completely stunned. Did that animal just steal my ring? He has a highly problematic obsession with shiny objects, Layla explained, her professional demeanor momentarily fracturing into pure exasperation. Spike did not wait for further commentary. He leaped gracefully from the table and bolted toward the swinging service doors, the invaluable royal artifact clinking against his teeth. "This is an absolute logistical nightmare," Layla groaned internally, already moving toward the exit. "If he gets that into his hidden stash under the office sofa, we will never see it again."
"Then I suggest we catch him," Gideon said, stepping swiftly past her, the Alpha King officially joining the hunt for a domestic feline thief. Chapter 7. The staff corridors of Cresthaven Peaks were a narrow maze of muted lighting and plush carpet, entirely separate from the glamorous summit happening nearby. Gideon moved with surprising stealth for a man of his towering stature. His charcoal-toned suit blended into the dim hallway as he tracked the soft, rapid paw steps of the feline thief. Layla hurried closely beside him, her tailored dark gray workwear rustling softly. She kept her sleek acrylic clipboard tucked tightly against her ribs. The entire situation was profoundly absurd. If the delegates see the Alpha King sprinting after a house cat, my firm's reputation will be permanently ruined. Layla thought frantically. I will be organizing local bake sales for the rest of my miserable life. He turned down the west corridor. Gideon whispered, his sharp senses zeroing in on the cat. The rich scent of his roasted coffee beans and worn leather mingled tightly with her fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar in the confined space. Spike is heading for the laundry chutes, Layla warned quietly, matching his long strides. If he drops the ring down the shaft, it goes straight to the basement incinerator room. We need to flank him. Gideon nodded, a spark of genuine amusement dancing in his eyes. He clearly found the high-stakes pursuit incredibly entertaining. She issues tactical commands with flawless precision, Gideon noted internally, utterly charmed by her intense focus. Most women would be apologizing profusely. She is coordinating a tactical strike on a pet. They rounded the corner simultaneously. Spike was paused near a large canvas laundry cart, the royal signet ring still clamped firmly in his jaws. The cat looked between the two towering humans, clearly calculating his next move. "Spike," Layla used her most commanding, authoritative voice. "Drop the jewelry, right now. I will give you premium salmon treats." Spike tilted his head, seemingly weighing the offer. Gideon decided to take a different approach. Slowly, he crouched down, bringing himself closer to the cat's level. "Listen to me, little beast," the king murmured softly, holding out an open palm. "That ring is a vital piece of Northern Territory history. Relinquish it, and I vow you shall never lack for treats again." Spike blinked slowly. He trotted forward, entirely unafraid of the powerful Alpha, and elegantly dropped the shiny ring directly into Gideon's massive palm. Then, the cat rubbed his head against Gideon's wrist, purring loudly before sauntering away down the hall. "Unbelievable," Layla breathed, leaning against the hallway wall. "He actually listened to you. He never listens to me." Gideon stood up, sliding the signet ring back onto his right index finger. He turned to face Layla, closing the small distance between them. The narrow corridor suddenly felt incredibly intimate. There was no bustling kitchen staff here. There were no delegates, just the quiet hum of the building and the magnetic pull of their shared bond. He recognized a mutually beneficial negotiation, Gideon said softly. He stepped closer, raising a hand to gently tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed against her pale skin, sending a brilliant shock of electricity through them both. Layla's breath hitched. She looked up, her resolute, assessing gaze locking onto his eyes. She didn't pull away from the touch. The humor of the chase faded, replaced by a deep, undeniable physical tension. He is looking at me like I am the only person in this entire building, Layla realized, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm. I should step back. I should firmly cite professional boundaries. Instead, she stayed perfectly still, drowning in the scent of coffee and leather. Gideon leaned down, his gaze dropping to her lips. Before he could close the final inch, Layla's customized Summit earpiece buzzed sharply. Layla, the council meeting is starting in 10 minutes, Cody's voice echoed in her ear, shattering the moment. The king needs to be at the main podium. Layla blinked, stepping back quickly and clearing her throat. She gripped her clipboard like a lifeline. Duty calls, Your Majesty. Your audience is waiting. Chapter 8. The Grand Council meeting hall was a cavernous space filled with rows of plush velvet seating and a magnificent dome ceiling. Hundreds of delegates from various supernatural factions murmured amongst themselves, the collective noise a low, steady rumble. Layla stood at the far back of the room, positioned near the main exit doors. She adjusted her customized Summit earpiece, ensuring the audio feeds were perfectly balanced. Her dark gray workwear remained immaculate, and she held her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard securely in her hands. That moment in the hallway was entirely too close, Layla chided herself, actively trying to steady her breathing. I need to focus on the schedule. He is the Alpha King. I am simply the logistical orchestrator. At the front of the room, Gideon stepped up to the polished wooden podium. The ambient chatter instantly ceased. His imposing presence commanded absolute silence without him having to utter a single syllable. In his tailored charcoal-toned suit, he looked every inch the powerful monarch he was. The royal signet ring gleamed safely on his right index finger under the stage lights. Delegates, honored guests, Gideon began, his rich, resonant voice carrying perfectly across the vast room. We gather today not merely to discuss borders and trade, but to forge a unified future. Layla watched him speak. He was articulate, commanding, and possessed a quiet dignity that was undeniably magnetic. The scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather seemed to drift all the way to the back of the hall, wrapping securely around her senses. Despite her fierce independence and lingering trauma regarding powerful alphas, she could not deny the profound respect blossoming in her chest. He was fundamentally different from Trenton. Gideon didn't lead through fear or oppressive dominance. He led through steady strength and genuine care. Without realizing it, Layla relaxed her posture. She offered him a long, appreciative, intense stare, letting her guard drop entirely in the safety of the shadows. From the podium, Gideon swept his gaze across the audience, maintaining perfect eye contact with the delegates. However, his sharp alpha vision easily cut through the dim lighting at the back of the room. He found Layla standing near the exit. He saw the subtle shift in her stance. He saw the genuine admiration radiating from her unblinking gaze. She is looking at me like I hung the moon, Gideon realized. A sudden, overwhelming wave of emotion crashing into his chest. My fiercely independent, brilliant mate is truly seeing me. The sheer impact of her stare struck him profoundly. Gideon's mind, usually a fortress of organized political strategies, completely blanked. He opened his mouth to deliver the next crucial point regarding the economic treaties, but no words emerged. The silence stretched for a full 3 seconds. Then 5. Hundreds of delegates stared at the Alpha King in mounting confusion. He stood completely frozen at the podium, staring directly over their heads toward the back doors. A faint dusting of red appeared on his sharp jawline. He had entirely lost his train of thought. Your Majesty, a council member whispered from the front row. Layla's eyes widened in sudden panic. She quickly tapped her acrylic clipboard against her leg, trying to subtly break his trance. Is the king of the Northern Territories actually malfunctioning because I looked at him too long? Layla thought, a mixture of horror and profound amusement bubbling up inside her. Gideon finally blinked, forcibly tearing his gaze away from Layla. He cleared his throat, adjusting the cuffs of his charcoal suit to buy himself a precious second to recover. Apologies, Gideon said smoothly, his deep voice quickly steadying the room. I was merely taking a moment to appreciate the extraordinary organizational efforts that made this summit possible. Now, regarding the Western trade routes. Layla let out a breath she didn't know she was holding, a small, genuine smile finally breaking across her face. He had recovered flawlessly, but the truth remained undeniable between them. The fearsome Alpha King possessed a secret vulnerability, and surprisingly, it was her. Chapter 9. The midnight quiet of Cresthaven Peaks was a rare, precious commodity. Inside her temporary office, Layla sat behind the massive, solid oak desk, the glowing screen of her laptop illuminating the elegant twist of her hair. She rubbed her tired eyes, placing her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard neatly beside the keyboard. The catering invoices for the opening gala were wonderfully precise, yet reviewing them felt endlessly tedious. If I look at one more spreadsheet, my brain might actually liquefy, Layla thought, suppressing a long yawn. A soft, familiar scratching sounded near the velvet armchair. Spike the cat was currently curled into a tiny, sleeping ball, completely exhausted from his earlier life of feline crime. Layla smiled, reaching up to gently remove her customized Summit earpiece. The silence was golden, but it was abruptly shattered by the quiet click of the office door. The rich, grounding scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather immediately flooded the room, easily overpowering the lingering aroma of her fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar. Layla didn't scramble under the furniture this time. She merely looked up as Gideon stepped through the doorway. He had discarded his tailored suit jacket, standing before her in a crisp white dress shirt and his charcoal-toned slacks. He held 2 steaming paper coffee cups in his large hands. The royal signet ring gleamed securely on his right index finger. She looks utterly exhausted, yet she remains the most captivating woman I have ever encountered, Gideon realized internally, stepping fully into the room. I was informed that the logistics director runs entirely on caffeine and sheer stubbornness after 11 o'clock, Gideon murmured, his deep voice keeping a respectful, hushed volume. He walked over and placed one of the cups directly onto the oak surface. Your informants are dangerously accurate, Your Majesty, Layla replied, gratefully wrapping her hands around the warm cup. She took a tentative sip. It wasn't the bitter venue brew. It was a luxurious, perfectly roasted blend. This is phenomenal. Where did you even find this at midnight? Kings have their clandestine secrets, Gideon said, offering a genuinely lively smile. He didn't take the guest chair. Instead, he simply leaned against the edge of her desk, maintaining a comfortable, non-threatening distance. I noticed you managed to repair the minor crisis with the audio-visual equipment during the evening panel. Flawlessly executed. He is actively paying attention to my work, not just my scent, Layla noted, a strange flutter warming her chest. She quickly pushed the feeling down. The projectors merely required a firm recalibration. It is my job to ensure you look majestic and commanding on stage, rather than standing in the dark. And earlier today, when I lost my words during the primary address, Gideon inquired softly, tilting his head. Was that part of your logistical orchestration? Layla paused, her unblinking stare locking onto his sharp features. She refused to retreat. I believe you recovered from that particular malfunction entirely on your own. Gideon chuckled, a rich sound that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. You are incredibly evasive, Layla. It is a highly formidable defense mechanism. But right now, the summit is asleep. The delegates are gone. You don't have to wear your armor. He reached out, his fingers lightly brushing the edge of her acrylic clipboard. The action wasn't an invasion, it was an invitation. I should politely ask him to leave, but the truth is, I want him to stay. Layla admitted silently, her pragmatic mind finally losing ground to her heart. My armor is highly tailored and very expensive, Layla countered, her tone softening into a gentle, teasing rhythm. I don't take it off for just anyone. Gideon. Hearing his name slip past her lips sent a visible jolt through him. He straightened slightly, his dark eyes fixed entirely on her. The professional shields they had maintained all day were slowly dissolving, leaving behind an electric, undeniably profound connection. Chapter 10. The quiet intimacy of the office wrapped securely around them. Gideon took a sip from his own coffee cup, his gaze never leaving Layla's face. He admired the resilience practically radiating from her posture. She was a free delta, a rarity in their world, and her independence was both fascinating and deeply concerning. To be severed from a pack requires enduring an unimaginable level of pain, Gideon thought.
a protective instinct flaring hot in his chest. Who hurt her enough to make that desperate choice? You mentioned earlier that you are a severed wolf, Gideon began, his voice a low, steady cadence. He carefully placed his cup next to her acrylic clipboard on the solid oak desk. The severance clause is an archaic piece of magic. It is notoriously punishing, both physically and financially. Most wolves would rather endure a difficult leader than face the isolation of being unbonded. Layla's fingers tightened around her warm paper cup. The scent of her fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar spiked with a sudden, sharp note of anxiety. She broke her intense stare, looking down at the dark gray fabric of her workwear. I prefer to call it being fiercely self-reliant, Layla deflected smoothly, offering a tight, practiced smile. Operating as an independent logistics firm in neutral territory allows me to bypass the tedious bureaucracy of pack politics. If I tell him the truth about Trenton, he will see me as a victim. I refuse to be pitied by a king, Layla told herself firmly, building her mental walls back up brick by brick. Layla, Gideon said gently. He didn't use an oppressive alpha command. He couldn't, even if he wanted to, given her severed status, but his tone commanded absolute trust. I am not a politician seeking leverage. I am your mate. You don't have to hide the ugly parts of your history from me. The sincerity in his words struck a deep chord within her. It was a refreshing departure from the arrogant bluster she was accustomed to from powerful men. My previous alpha was a man who viewed his pack members as disposable commodities, Layla finally confessed, her voice remarkably quiet. She kept her eyes focused on the coffee cup. When his personal debts threatened to consume his leadership, he decided my budding business was the perfect asset to seize and liquidate. He demanded I hand over everything I had built. Gideon's jawline tensed. The sharp, unforgiving angles of his face hardened as a low growl rumbled in the back of his throat. He forcefully reined it in, refusing to let his anger overshadow her moment of vulnerability. You invoked the clause to protect your life's work, Gideon deduced, his respect for her swelling exponentially. I invoked it to protect my brother, Layla corrected, finally looking up to meet his gaze. Her eyes blazed with a fierce, unwavering loyalty. Cody and I left with nothing but our clothes, Spike, and a very old plum-colored sedan. It was ruinous. But it made us free. I will never bow to another corrupt leader again. She is a warrior in tailored slacks, Gideon realized, utterly captivated by her fierce spirit. She doesn't need a savior, she is her own champion. You survived, Gideon affirmed softly. He reached across the desk, his large hand gently covering hers. The sparks of the mate bond danced across their skin, forming a warm, comforting current. And you built an empire from the ashes. It is profoundly impressive, Layla. Layla exhaled a long, shaky breath. The validation from the Alpha King felt unexpectedly soothing. She had given him a partial truth. She hadn't named Trenton or the Red Crete Pack, but it was enough to bridge the gap between them. Spike stretched on the velvet armchair, letting out a sleepy trill. The tension in the room shifted from heavy past traumas to a quiet, promising warmth, leaving Gideon yearning to uncover every remaining secret she guarded. Chapter 11. The next morning, the Summit Logistics headquarters was a whirlwind of activity. Layla stood near the filing cabinets, dressed in a fresh set of her signature dark gray workwear. Her hair was once again secured in an elegant twist. She firmly attached her customized Summit earpiece, preparing for the relentless demands of the second day. Cody burst through the office door, carrying a towering stack of freshly printed guest manifests. He dropped them onto the massive, solid oak desk with a loud thud, immediately beginning to tap his foot against the carpet. The Eastern Perimeter security team needs a schedule adjustment, Cody announced, his lively voice tinged with a slight edge of panic. And the catering staff is threatening a strike over the luxurious caviar requests from the vampire delegation. Clip the printed security adjustments to my acrylic board, Layla instructed calmly, seamlessly slipping back into her pragmatic leadership role. And tell the catering head I will personally authorize a bonus if they manage to appease the vampires without bloodshed. Cody paused, leaning his hands against the desk. He stopped tapping his foot, his expression shifting into a serious, protective frown. I saw the king leaving this corridor very late last night, Layla. He was walking away from your office. My brother has the observational skills of a hawk when he thinks I am in danger, Layla noted, feeling a faint flush rise to her cheeks. Gideon merely brought me a cup of coffee,
Layla deflected smoothly. She picked up the top manifest, pretending to be deeply engrossed in the printed names. It was a professional courtesy for keeping his summit running flawlessly. Layla, he is the Alpha King, Cody warned gently. His beta instincts were highly attuned to pack dynamics, even without a formal bond. I know we are severed, but getting romantically entangled with a monarch is a dangerous game. They are highly territorial, they command entire armies. If things go poorly, we cannot simply invoke another loophole to escape. He is terrified of history repeating itself, Cody thought, a cold shiver running down his spine. I cannot watch her lose everything all over again. I am fully aware of the risks, Cody, Layla replied, her tone softening. She looked at her brother, offering a reassuring smile. I am not submitting to anyone. We are simply communicating. Cody sighed, clearly unconvinced, but willing to drop the subject for now. Just promise me you will keep your guard up. Now, review the final page of that manifest. The late editions arrived via the council courier this morning. Layla flipped the page attached to her clipboard. Her eyes scanned the freshly printed ink. The scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedars suddenly soured with a sharp spike of adrenaline. Her heart executed a painful, erratic stutter against her ribs. There, listed plainly under the arrival schedule for 3 o'clock that afternoon, was the Red Creek Pack. Alpha Trenton was marked as a verified attendee. He is coming here, Layla whispered, her pragmatic demeanor fracturing instantly. Cody's face drained of color. The deeply ingrained beta submission instinct flared within him, a cruel biological echo of his past trauma. He gripped the edge of the solid oak desk, his knuckles turning white. Trenton, why would the council invite him? Red Creek holds a minor seat on the regional trade board. Layla reasoned, her mind racing 100 miles an hour. She forced herself to breathe, staring unblinkingly at the paper. He has a legal right to attend neutral summits. If Trenton flashes his alpha aura at me, my knees will completely betray me, Cody thought, genuine terror gripping his chest. I hate that I am still afraid of him. Layla saw the sheer panic in her brother's eyes. Her fear vanished, instantly replaced by a fierce, undeniable protective fury. She would not allow Trenton to humiliate her family again. Chapter 12. Layla stood completely still in the center of the office, her mind rapidly constructing a tactical defense. She clutched her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard so tightly her fingers ached. The revelation of Trenton's impending arrival hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Spike the cat, sensing the sudden distress, hopped up onto the solid oak desk and nudged his head against Layla's arm, offering a rare moment of feline comfort. We need to pack up, Cody said, his voice trembling slightly. He began blindly gathering invoices, his lively optimism entirely crushed. We can manage the rest of the summit remotely. I will pull the plum-colored sedan around to the loading dock. Stop, Layla commanded firmly. She reached out, placing a steadying hand on her brother's shoulder. We are not running. We paid for our freedom, Cody. Cresthaven Peaks is neutral territory, governed by the council. If he attempts any unprovoked aggression, he will face immediate expulsion and catastrophic financial penalties. I would rather swallow shattered glass than let Trenton chase us out of our own kingdom, Layla thought fiercely, her posture straightening. Layla, you know how he operates, Cody argued, stepping back. He doesn't need to throw a punch. His alpha aura is suffocating. Even with the severance clause protecting you, my biology is compromised. If he corners me... He won't corner you, Layla interrupted, her voice entirely devoid of its usual humor. Her brilliant strategic mind had already formulated a flawless solution. Because you are not going to be in this building. Cody blinked, confusion temporarily overriding his panic. What do you mean? I am the assistant logistics director. We have a massive influx of floral arrangements and extra seating arriving at the off-site supply warehouses across the city, Layla stated, her tone shifting into pure professional authority. She tapped her customized Summit earpiece. It requires immediate, high-level supervision. I am officially reassigning you to the warehouse sector until the summit concludes tomorrow. She is intentionally isolating me to protect my pride, Cody realized, a mixture of profound gratitude and guilt washing over him.
She is going to face him entirely alone. Layla, I cannot leave you to handle the main floor by yourself, Cody protested weakly. He will try to intimidate you. He will try to ruin your reputation in front of the delegates. Trenton thrives on fear, but he fundamentally underestimates the power of a woman who has already lost everything, Layla reminded herself grimly. She reached into her tote bag, her knuckles white. This is my battle, and I will dismantle him with protocol and precision. She handed Cody the master set of warehouse keys. I am now a highly successful business owner with ironclad contracts and a feline who occasionally steals royal jewelry. I am untouchable. Cody looked at the heavy brass keys in his hand. He knew she was right. If he stayed, he would be a liability, a vulnerability Trenton could exploit to hurt Layla. You call me the second he steps out of line, Cody insisted, his jaw tightening with resolve. I don't care about the summit rules. If he touches you, I will drive the sedan straight through the front doors of this venue. He won't touch me, Layla promised softly, pulling her brother into a brief, fierce hug. Now go, I have a summit to orchestrate. As Cody hurried out the door to secure the vehicle, Layla turned back to her desk. She smoothed out her dark gray workwear. Her heart was racing, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. She was a free Delta, and she was ready for war. Chapter 13. The grand lobby of Cresthaven Peaks featured soaring glass panels that bathed the polished marble floors in bright afternoon sunlight. Layla stood near the central fountain, adjusting the volume dial on her customized Summit earpiece. Her tailored dark gray workwear remained impeccably crisp despite the mounting hours of relentless coordination. She held her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard tightly against her side, ticking off the final vendor arrivals with a silver pen she pulled from her pocket. If this caterer complains about the loading dock spacing one more time, I will personally assign him to the parking garage. Layla mused quietly, forcing a polite nod at a passing delegate. From a nearby seating alcove, Gideon observed her. He wore a fresh charcoal-toned suit, the fabric moving fluidly over his towering frame. The royal signet ring gleamed securely on his right index finger as he held a crystal glass of sparkling water. He deeply admired how she commanded the massive space without ever needing to raise her voice. She manages this supernatural chaos with the precision of a seasoned battlefield tactician, Gideon thought, a gentle smile touching the sharp angles of his jawline. I could watch her orchestrate this madness all day. At exactly 3 o'clock, the ambient hum of the lobby shifted drastically. The heavy mahogany double doors swung open, pulled wide by the venue staff. A harsh, acrid scent of bitter pine and damp soil rolled into the elegant space, instantly overpowering the delicate floral arrangements. Layla's posture locked into rigid stillness. Her heart hammered a frantic, erratic rhythm against her ribs. The familiar, oppressive scent triggered a cascade of buried memories. My lungs refused to draw air. Keep it together, Layla. He cannot hurt you here, she chanted internally, fighting the immediate, overwhelming urge to retreat to her office. Trenton, the alpha of the Red Creek pack, stepped purposefully over the threshold. He wore an ostentatious crimson velvet jacket that aggressively flaunted his financial recklessness, a garment carrying a luxurious price tag designed solely to demand attention. His arrogant gaze swept the room, dripping with an unwarranted, deep-seated sense of superiority. His presence alone seemed to sour the atmosphere, causing nearby delegates to subtly step away. Gideon narrowed his dark eyes, instantly tracking the sudden drop in ambient conversation. The Alpha King's highly attuned senses analyzed the newcomer, but his primary focus immediately snapped back to his mate. Layla's vibrant confidence, which she had wielded so effortlessly all morning, had completely evaporated. She stood frozen by the fountain. Her knuckles were entirely white where she gripped her acrylic clipboard, and the scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar was suddenly laced with sharp, undeniable distress. Why does she look as though she is standing before a firing squad? Gideon wondered, his chest tightening as a fierce protective instinct surged forward. Who is this arrogant fool, and why does he terrify my equal? The rich, grounding aroma of roasted coffee beans and worn leather flared aggressively from Gideon, a silent warning to the room. He set his crystal glass down onto a side table with a definitive click.
Layla did not look in Gideon's direction. Instead, she turned sharply on her heel. Maintaining a brisk, strictly professional pace, she walked directly toward the restricted service corridors, actively avoiding any possibility of intercepting the new arrival. Gideon did not follow her immediately. He understood she needed a moment to construct her defenses. Instead, he stood up slowly, keeping his gaze locked on Trenton. He committed the Red Creek Alpha's face to memory, a cold, calculating determination settling over him. He was going to uncover exactly why that man had driven Layla into the shadows. Chapter 14. Gideon paced the length of his private summit suite, the thick carpet silencing his heavy footsteps. He had abandoned his charcoal suit jacket on the back of a plush sofa. The suite was a sanctuary of neutral tones, but his mind was a tempest of calculated fury. He stood before the expansive glass windows, looking out over Cresthaven peaks. I have commanded armies and negotiated centuries-old treaties, yet seeing her tremble infuriates me more than any battlefield defeat. Gideon realized, his hands clasping firmly behind his back. He turned as his lead security liaison, a stoic wolf named Torin, entered the room, carrying a sleek digital tablet. You requested the historical registry for the Red Creek Pack, Your Majesty, Torin said, holding out the device. I pulled their financial records and formal council disputes from the past decade. Gideon crossed the room and took the tablet, his royal signet ring tapping lightly against the glass screen. He swiped through the encrypted files, scanning the data with practiced efficiency. Layla had told him her previous alpha viewed his people as disposable commodities. She mentioned a budding business and staggering debts. Let us see the true measure of this arrogant man, Gideon thought, his jaw tightening as the digital ink outlined a long history of profound financial mismanagement. Trenton's record was a glaring testament to his greed. The documents detailed massive gambling losses and aggressive internal taxation. Then, Gideon found the specific council addendum filed exactly 5 years ago. It was a formal legal registration of the severance clause. The listed applicants were Layla and Cody. The cost associated with buying their freedom was listed right there on the screen. It was an astronomical fee, a completely ruinous sum that would take a normal citizen a lifetime to accumulate. Trenton had legally attempted to seize Layla's logistics firm to cover his own catastrophic debts, leaving her no choice but to bankrupt herself to escape his jurisdiction. He tried to steal her life's work, simply because he lacked the discipline to govern his own ledgers. Gideon seethed internally, a low, dangerous rumble echoing in his chest. He stripped her of everything, forcing her to rebuild from utter nothingness. Gideon handed the tablet back to Torin, the pieces of the puzzle locked together perfectly. Trenton was the monster from Layla's past. He was the reason she flinched at the idea of submitting to an alpha. He was the reason she hid under her solid oak desk when a powerful man entered her office. Are we expelling the Red Creek delegation, Your Majesty? Torin asked quietly, sensing the lethal shift in his king's demeanor. No, Gideon replied, his voice a dark, resonant calm. He walked over to the sofa and retrieved his suit jacket, sliding it smoothly over his shoulders. Cresthaven Peaks is neutral territory. Expelling him without provocation would violate the summit treaties and undermine Layla's professional event. She is a tactician, and she would despise me if I ruined her flawless logistical operation over a personal vendetta, Gideon reminded himself, meticulously adjusting his cuffs. We will let him remain, Gideon commanded, heading toward the suite door. The scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather intensified, carrying a sharp edge of predatory focus. However, keep a detailed watch on his movements. If he approaches the event planner, I want to be notified immediately. He will not intimidate her in my presence. Chapter 15. The grand hallway of the Summit Center was an architectural marvel of polished stone and towering arches, designed to facilitate quiet, diplomatic conversations. Layla walked briskly down the center of the corridor, her tailored dark gray workwear blending into the shadows of the afternoon. She clutched her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard tightly to her chest, using it as a familiar physical barrier against the mounting anxiety. Cody was safely managing the supply warehouse across the city. Layla had intentionally isolated her brother from this exact location, securing his peace of mind. She was entirely alone. If I can just reach the audiovisual booth, I can monitor the floor remotely until the evening gala begins. Layla reasoned internally, her sensible shoes clicking softly against the marble tiles. Well, if it isn't my most stubborn runaway investment. A harsh, deeply unpleasant voice echoed through the vast hallway. Layla stopped. The sound scraped against her nerves like jagged metal. She took a slow, deliberate breath, forcing her spine into a rigid line of defiance before turning around. Trenton stood 20 feet away, blocking her path to the main lobby. His ostentatious crimson velvet jacket looked entirely out of place in the sophisticated corridor. He smiled, a cruel, mocking expression that failed to reach his cold eyes. The bitter scent of pine and damp soil flooded the space, suffocating her own subtle fragrance of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar. "Alpha Trenton?" Layla greeted, her voice remarkably even. She did not offer a bow. She did not lower her gaze. "Welcome to Cresthaven Peaks. If you require registration assistance, the front desk is fully staffed." Treat him like a minor inconvenience, not a monster. Layla coached herself, maintaining her intense, unblinking stare to project absolute confidence. Trenton scoffed, stepping closer. "You always possessed a uniquely irritating level of arrogance, Layla. I see abandoning your pack hasn't taught you proper humility. You drained your accounts to escape me, only to end up fetching coffee for the council." "I own the logistics firm organizing this entire event," Layla corrected sharply, tapping her silver pen against her clipboard. "I do not fetch coffee for anyone." Trenton's cruel smile vanished. His eyes flashed a vibrant, unnatural gold. Instead of continuing the verbal debate, he released his alpha aura entirely. The oppressive dominance surged outward, crashing into Layla with a sudden, breathless force. It was a heavy, suffocating pressure designed to physically crush a lesser wolf's spirit and force them to their knees. Before the severance clause, this exact aura would have buckled her legs instantly. He thinks he can still command me. He thinks I am still that terrified girl in his office, Layla realized, a fierce, blazing anger burning away the last remnants of her fear. The heavy pressure washed over her, but it found no magical anchor. Because she was a free delta, the command slid off her like water over smooth glass. She did not tremble. She did not drop her acrylic clipboard. Layla stood tall, entirely unaffected by his supernatural display. "Your parlor tricks hold zero authority here, Trenton," she stated, her tone dripping with icy professionalism. "You are wasting your energy." Trenton stared at her, genuine shock breaking through his arrogant facade. He took an aggressive step forward, raising his hand in a clear threat of physical intimidation. Above them, unnoticed in the shadowed alcove of the second-floor balcony, Gideon watched the entire exchange. His hands gripped the marble railing with lethal force, ready to intervene the second the Red Creek Alpha crossed the line. Chapter 16. The silence in the grand hallway stretched, taut and dangerously fragile. Trenton lowered his hand, realizing his magical dominance had entirely failed. Instead of retreating, he shifted his tactics to the one arena he believed he still controlled: her professional livelihood. "You think a piece of archaic severance magic makes you invincible?" Trenton sneered, closing the distance until he stood just a few feet away. His bitter scent of pine was overwhelmingly abrasive. "I sit on the regional trade board, Layla. One word from me to the council, and your little logistics firm will be blacklisted from every lucrative contract in the territory. I will personally ensure your business turns to ash." He truly believes a pathetic threat to my contracts will break me, after everything I have already survived, Layla thought, a dry, incredulous amusement bubbling up beneath her anger. From the shadowed balcony above, Gideon's muscles coiled tight beneath his charcoal-toned suit. The Alpha King's jaw locked rigidly. The sheer audacity of the Red Creek leader threatening his mate in his own territory pushed him dangerously close to shifting into his wolf form right there on the marble landing. "I could tear him apart before he even registers the movement," Gideon seethed internally, his dark eyes fixed on Trenton's throat. "I could end this miserable tyrant right now." Gideon stepped forward, preparing to vault over the intricate railing, but he stopped. He looked at Layla, really looked at her. She wasn't shrinking away. She wasn't looking around for someone to rescue her. Layla calmly unclipped a specific printed document from her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard. She held the paper up, her unblinking stare locking directly onto Trenton's eyes.
I highly recommend you review the summit penal codes you signed upon entry, Alpha Trenton, Layla said, her voice echoing clearly through the corridor with uncompromising authority. Specifically, Section 4, Paragraph 2. Trenton narrowed his eyes, refusing to look at the paper.
I don't care about your bureaucratic nonsense.
You should. Layla countered smoothly, her dark gray workwear making her look like a formidable executive judge. It explicitly states that any visiting delegate who attempts extortion, sabotage, or unprovoked intimidation against venue staff will face immediate expulsion. Furthermore, the offending pack will be subjected to a catastrophic financial penalty, levied directly by the Supernatural Council. Let us see if your arrogant pride is worth bankrupting your pack a second time, Layla challenged silently, holding her ground without an ounce of hesitation. Cresthaven Peaks is heavily monitored by high-definition security feeds, Layla continued, pointing her silver pen toward a discreet black dome mounted on the ceiling above them. If you attempt to blacklist my firm, I will submit this footage to the council. They will seize your remaining assets before you even reach the city limits. Trenton glanced up at the camera, his face turning an unflattering shade of pale. The reality of his precarious financial situation violently collided with her airtight logic. He was trapped, outmaneuvered by the very woman he had once tried to ruin. Up on the balcony, Gideon let out a slow, deeply impressed breath. His hands slowly released their crushing grip on the marble railing. The primal urge to protect her dissolved into a profound, overwhelming wave of respect. Look at her hold her ground against a monster. Gideon marveled internally, his heart swelling with an emotion far stronger than simple attraction. She doesn't need a savior to fight her battles. She needs a partner to stand beside her. Trenton practically vibrated with furious humiliation. Knowing he was entirely defeated by a free Delta holding an acrylic clipboard, he spun on his heel and marched swiftly back toward the lobby, leaving Layla standing victorious in the corridor. Chapter 17. Layla watched the arrogant pack leader disappear into the bustling crowds of the main lobby, his bright velvet attire swallowed by the sea of delegates. The bitter scent of pine and damp soil gradually faded, replaced once again by the ambient, neutral air of the Summit Center. She stood completely still in the grand hallway, her fingers slightly numb as she carefully secured the printed penal codes back under the metal clip of her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard. A profound, cascading wave of relief rushed through her veins, entirely washing away the lingering dread. She had faced her greatest nightmare without breaking. From the periphery of her vision, a tall shadow detached itself from the ornate marble staircase leading down from the second-floor balcony. Gideon descended the steps with the fluid, predatory grace. His tailored, charcoal-toned suit caught the afternoon light, and the grounding scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather immediately announced his presence. Layla turned her unblinking stare toward him. She smoothly slid the silver pen back into her pocket. "You were watching the entire exchange from the upper alcove?" she stated, her voice remarkably calm despite the recent chaos. "I was prepared to vault over that railing and physically remove him from the premises the second he raised his hand to you," Gideon confessed. His deep, resonant voice carried a dangerous, fiercely protective edge. He closed the remaining distance between them, stopping just a few feet away. "But you had the situation flawlessly managed. You dismantled a territorial alpha with a clipboard and a thorough understanding of bureaucratic penal codes." "I am the event planner, Your Majesty," Layla replied, a faint, genuine smile touching her lips. "I take my venue regulations incredibly seriously. Ensuring disruptive guests adhere to the established protocols is simply a fundamental part of the job." Gideon did not return the smile immediately. His sharp jawline remained tense, his dark eyes searching her face for any hidden signs of distress. "My lead security liaison pulled the council registry this afternoon, Layla. I saw the official documentation. I know exactly what he attempted to steal from you, and I know the devastating price you paid for the severance clause." Layla's breath hitched slightly, but she did not look away. The truth was fully exposed, stripping away the last of her professional armor. "He is a tyrant who compensates for his profound inadequacies through intimidation," Gideon continued softly, stepping closer. He reached out, his hand hovering briefly before he gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "Watching you stand your ground against him,
was the most magnificent display of courage I have ever witnessed. You are extraordinary.
The warmth of his fingers against her skin sent a brilliant spark of electricity radiating through her chest. Layla closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, allowing herself to simply exist in the safety of his presence. He believed I was still the terrified girl who worked in his territory. Layla murmured, opening her eyes to meet his intense gaze. He failed to realize that losing everything taught me how to survive anything. I refused to let him take my firm.
You will never have to lose anything again.
Gideon vowed, the royal signet ring gleaming on his right index finger as he rested his hand gently on her shoulder. As long as I draw breath, no one will ever threaten you or your brother. You have my word. Layla looked at the Alpha King, recognizing the unyielding truth in his statement. He wasn't offering to control her. He was offering a partnership built on profound respect. For the first time in 5 years, the burden she carried upon her shoulders felt entirely manageable. Chapter 18. The quiet sanctuary of the logistics office offered immediate refuge. Layla pushed the heavy wooden doors shut, blocking out the ambient noise of the summit. Spike the cat immediately hopped off the velvet armchair, trotting over to greet them with a demanding, raspy meow. Layla walked over to the massive solid oak desk and placed her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard flat onto the polished surface. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the hallway confrontation finally began to evaporate, leaving behind a sudden sweeping wave of physical exhaustion. Her hands developed a faint, uncontrollable tremor. Gideon tracked her movements carefully, the rich scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather filling the enclosed space. He recognized the physiological crash. Without a word, he stepped behind her and gently gripped her elbows, providing a steady, grounding support.
You can let go now.
Gideon murmured softly, his deep voice vibrating right behind her shoulder.
He is gone.
You won the battle. Layla leaned back slightly, allowing his towering frame to support her weight. The tailored fabric of his charcoal-toned suit felt incredibly warm against her dark gray workwear. A shaky exhale escaped her lips, carrying the fragrant scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar into the room. I spent 5 years looking over my shoulder, Layla confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Every time a door slammed too loudly, or a vendor raised their voice, my mind immediately snapped back to the Red Creek territory. I meticulously built this entire logistics firm just to prove to myself that I could survive without a pack. Spike leaped onto the solid oak desk, purring loudly as he nudged his small head against Layla's trembling fingers. She offered the feline a gentle scratch behind the ears, drawing comfort from the simple, repetitive motion. You proved far more than mere survival, Gideon assured her. He stepped around the desk, moving to stand directly in front of her. His dark eyes held a profound, unwavering affection. You orchestrated the largest supernatural gathering of the decade. You protected Cody by sending him to the off-site supply warehouse. You are a brilliant tactician, Layla. I am tired of being a tactician, she admitted, finally verbalizing the secret she had guarded so fiercely. I am tired of analyzing every interaction for hidden threats. I am exhausted from constantly defending my independence. Gideon reached out, taking both of her hands in his. His large fingers, adorned with the royal signet ring, completely enveloped hers. The mate bond hummed between them, a vibrant, soothing current of shared energy that chased away the lingering chill of her adrenaline crash. You do not have to fight alone anymore, Gideon promised, his tone ringing with absolute sincerity. I do not want a submissive follower. I crave a partner who will challenge me, who will hand me an itinerary when I am being difficult, and who will rule the Northern Territories as my equal. Layla maintained her unblinking stare, evaluating his words for any trace of falsehood. She found nothing but genuine devotion. The walls she had meticulously constructed to keep powerful men at a distance finally crumbled, leaving her entirely open to the reality of their bond. I don't want to hide from you anymore, Layla whispered, a radiant sense of clarity washing over her. Gideon's sharp jawline softened into a breathtaking, devastating smile. He brought her hands to his lips, pressing a tender kiss against her knuckles. Then I suggest you prepare for the evening gala, my beautiful Delta. Tonight, we celebrate your victory. Chapter 19. The evening gala completely transformed the grand ballroom of Cresthaven Peaks. The harsh logistical lighting was replaced by the warm, inviting glow of thousands of floating crystalline spheres. Layla stood before the full-length mirror in her private dressing room, taking a long, steadying breath. She had finally discarded her practical, dark gray workwear. In its place, she wore a breathtaking flowing sapphire gown. The luxurious silk material moved like liquid water, catching the ambient light with every subtle shift of her body. The garment was an indulgent, breathtaking investment she had purchased specifically for this culminating event, designed to project elegance and undeniable power. Layla meticulously secured her hair into a sophisticated twist, allowing a few elegant strands to frame her face. She left her customized Summit earpiece, her silver pen, and her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard resting securely inside her tote bag. Tonight, she was not merely the event planner managing vendor disputes, she was stepping out of the shadows entirely. Opening the dressing room door, the vibrant scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar trailed behind her. She walked gracefully down the carpeted corridor toward the main ballroom entrance. Gideon stood near the towering archway, waiting for her. He had expertly refreshed his appearance for the evening, his tailored charcoal-toned suit pressed to absolute perfection. The striking, chiseled structure of his jawline caught the soft illumination of the hallway. The royal signet ring gleamed on his right index finger, a symbol of his enduring authority. As Layla approached, the Alpha King turned his head, his dark eyes widened fractionally. The lively, dry sense of humor he usually carried vanished, replaced by a profound, captivated reverence. He completely forgot the names of the surrounding delegates. He forgot the economic treaties he had debated earlier that afternoon.
You look entirely breathtaking,
Gideon murmured as she closed the final distance between them. His deep voice held a slight, entirely genuine tremor, the rich aroma of roasted coffee beans and worn leather wrapped around her, welcoming and incredibly warm.
Thank you,
Layla replied, a radiant, confident smile illuminating her features. I decided it was officially time to stop blending into the background. Gideon offered his arm. Layla smoothly looped her hand through it, the physical contact sending a delightful rush of electricity straight to her core. Together, they entered the grand ballroom. The ambient chatter of the supernatural delegates noticeably dimmed as they walked across the floor. Hundreds of eyes tracked their synchronized movements. The fearsome Alpha of the Northern Territories and the fiercely independent Free Delta presented a remarkably united front. Trenton was nowhere to be seen, likely nursing his shattered pride in his assigned quarters. They navigated the crowded room with practiced ease. Several council members attempted to intercept Gideon to discuss territorial borders, but he politely yet firmly dismissed them. His attention remained entirely focused on the woman walking beside him. The music is lovely, and the catering staff appears to have resolved the caviar dispute, Gideon observed, his gaze sweeping over the elaborate tables before returning immediately to her. However, I find the sheer volume of people severely distracting. It is a summit gala. A substantial crowd is the primary objective. Layla teased, her brilliant wit shining through. I have fulfilled my diplomatic obligations for the day. Gideon stated smoothly, his hand gently covering hers where it rested on his arm. I would much rather discuss the future with my equal in a considerably quieter setting. Shall we leave? Layla looked up at him, her heart executing a joyful flutter against her ribs. She didn't hesitate. Yes, let's leave. Chapter 20. The heavy double doors of Gideon's private summit suite clicked shut, instantly sealing away the distant, muffled music of the evening gala. The luxurious room was bathed in the soft, inviting glow of elegant wall sconces, creating a sanctuary far removed from the bustling crowds below. Layla stepped further into the center of the expansive suite, the flowing silk of her sapphire gown brushing softly against the plush carpet. The rich, grounding scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather permeated every corner of the room, deeply intoxicating and entirely his. Gideon remained near the door for a brief moment, simply watching her with an expression of pure reverence. He slowly unbuttoned his tailored, charcoal-toned suit jacket, tossing it casually onto the back of a nearby velvet sofa. He looked imposing, yet incredibly vulnerable. The typically severe contours of his face softened by overwhelming affection. Are you entirely certain about this, Layla? Gideon asked, his resonant voice dropping to a quiet, intensely focused murmur. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, refusing to rush her.
because once we truly cross this threshold and acknowledge the bond, I will never let you slip away into the shadows again. You will be my equal in all things." Layla turned to face him. The lingering anxieties that had haunted her for 5 long years were completely gone, replaced by a radiant, undeniable certainty. She didn't need her sleek acrylic clipboard or her pragmatic dark gray workwear to protect her anymore. She was entirely safe here. "I told you, Gideon, I am completely done hiding," Layla answered softly. Her unblinking stare met his dark eyes, projecting complete, unwavering trust. The fragrant aroma of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar blossomed vibrantly in the air, offering a clear, biological invitation. Gideon closed the remaining distance between them. He raised his hands, his large fingers gently framing her face. The royal signet ring felt pleasantly cool against her heated skin. He stroked her cheekbones with an almost reverent touch, seemingly terrified of breaking the beautiful reality they had finally reached. "You are the most magnificent woman I have ever known," he whispered, his breath ghosting gently over her lips. Layla leaned up, eagerly eliminating the final fraction of space. When their lips met, the magical mate bond flared with brilliant, consuming intensity. It wasn't a frantic, desperate collision. It was a deeply emotional, beautifully detailed surrender. The kiss was rich with the profound understanding of 2 fiercely independent souls finally finding their exact missing piece. A soft, contented sigh escaped Layla as she wrapped her arms around his neck, her fingers tangling effortlessly in his dark hair. Gideon groaned, a low, rumbling sound of pure devotion vibrating deep within his chest. He pulled her flush against his solid frame, his hands sliding down to rest securely on her waist. The flowing sapphire fabric pooled around them like liquid elegance. Every lingering defensive wall Layla had meticulously constructed to keep the world at bay completely dissolved. She surrendered to the overwhelming warmth of his embrace, pouring years of heavily guarded emotion into the connection. Gideon met her vulnerability with steady, unyielding strength, silently promising to protect her brilliantly witty spirit forever. They moved perfectly in sync, a flawless tactical partnership transitioning seamlessly into a profound romantic bond. The world outside the suite, the summit logistics, the territorial disputes, and the arrogant rivals entirely ceased to exist. As the quiet evening deepened, the fearsome Alpha King of the Northern Territories and his fiercely pragmatic Delta Queen claimed each other entirely. It was a union built not on archaic commands or magical dominance, but on absolute equality, profound respect, and an undeniable, deeply intoxicating love. Chapter 21. The impending culmination of the Supernatural Summit brought a tangible sense of relief to the sprawling Cresthaven Peaks venue. With the final banquet winding down, Layla stood near the central fountain in the grand lobby, back in her impeccably tailored, dark gray workwear. The breathtaking sapphire gown from the previous evening was securely stored in her suite, replaced by the pragmatic necessity of coordinating the late-night logistics. She flipped through the printed manifests on her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard, verifying the final transport schedules. If I have to coordinate one more luggage dispute for the vampire delegation, I might actually scream into a decorative pillow, Layla mused internally, adjusting the volume on her customized Summit earpiece. Gideon strolled through the diminishing crowd, his towering frame immediately demanding attention. He wore his signature charcoal-toned suit, the fabric moving with liquid grace. The royal signet ring gleamed securely on his right index finger. As he approached, his grounding scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather wrapped around Layla, instantly soothing her lingering logistical fatigue. The northern transport vehicles are successfully pre-staged at the loading docks, and the primary panel halls have been securely cleared, Gideon reported, his deep, resonant voice carrying a note of profound satisfaction. "You executed a flawless event, Layla." He looks entirely too composed for a monarch who spent the last 3 days navigating endless political grievances, Layla thought, a warm, genuine smile illuminating her features. "I had exceptional motivation to ensure everything remained perfectly regulated. Besides, Cody handled the off-site supply warehouse brilliantly. We are merely an hour away from concluding tonight's banquet, which leaves only tomorrow morning's closing ceremony." Before Gideon could offer a romantic rebuttal, a sharp, dissonant static hissed through Layla's earpiece. It wasn't a standard communication error.
It was the encrypted emergency frequency. Layla's smile vanished instantly. She pressed 2 fingers firmly against the device, her pragmatic mind shifting into hypervigilance. The scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar flared with undeniable alarm. "Security control, confirm that signal," she ordered, her tone adopting a chilling, unquestionable authority. "Director,
We have a catastrophic perimeter breach," the venue's head of security replied, his voice tight with panic. "Multiple hostiles bypassed the eastern service gates. They disabled the outer cameras. It is a rogue faction, and they are heavily armed." This cannot be happening. Not on the final night, right when we were finally safe, Layla thought frantically, her knuckles turning bone white against her acrylic clipboard. Gideon's sharp jawline tightened, adopting a distinctly lethal edge. His highly attuned alpha senses caught the faint, malevolent aroma of sour blood and decaying leaves drifting through the venue's ventilation system. The rogues were already inside the building, and their scent profile confirmed they were not merely thieves. They were assassins. "They are targeting the crown," Gideon stated, his dark eyes scanning the vast lobby. He smoothly unbuttoned his suit jacket, preparing for imminent violence. "Layla, you must evacuate through the basement corridors immediately. Lock yourself inside the logistics office with Spike." "I am the event planner. I do not abandon my venue," Layla countered fiercely, refusing to retreat. She pressed 2 fingers to her earpiece, broadcasting a venue-wide override. "Security control, initiate an immediate, total lockdown of the delegate residential wings." She dropped her hand, her posture unyielding. "I am staying right here." The heavy mahogany double doors at the far end of the hall violently shattered inward, splintering into jagged wooden shards across the polished marble. The beautiful architectural feature was utterly destroyed. A dozen massive, feral wolves poured into the lobby, their eyes glowing with unnatural, chaotic malice. Their ragged fur and aggressive postures signaled a complete abandonment of civilized pack laws. The rogue faction had arrived, and their collective, predatory gaze locked entirely on the Alpha King. Chapter 22. The shattered remnants of the mahogany doors lay scattered across the polished marble floor, an irreversible casualty of the rogue invasion. The dozen feral wolves fanned out with alarming tactical precision, instantly forming a lethal semicircle around the central fountain. Their sour, aggressive scent entirely suffocated the remaining floral arrangements, turning the grand lobby into a precarious battleground. Gideon stepped protectively in front of Layla, his towering frame shielding her from their immediate line of sight. He deliberately dropped his charcoal-toned suit jacket onto the carpet, freeing his shoulders for the inevitable combat. They moved past the outer security grid with suspicious ease. Someone on the council provided them with the venue schematics, Gideon deduced internally, a cold, calculating fury settling deep within his chest. "I will dismantle every single one of these traitors." The largest of the rogue wolves, a hulking beast with a heavily scarred snout and matted gray fur, stepped forward. He didn't bother shifting into his human form to gloat. His malevolent intentions were abundantly clear. They intended to overwhelm the Alpha King with sheer, unrelenting numbers, assuming a coordinated ambush would compensate for their lack of royal blood. "Get to the service elevators, Layla," Gideon commanded softly, his voice a low, vibrating rumble that commanded absolute obedience from anyone but his mate. "Do not look back. I will handle this." He genuinely believes I will simply flee and leave him to face a dozen assassins alone. He clearly underestimates my stubbornness, Layla thought fiercely. She carefully set her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard onto the edge of the stone fountain, ensuring it wouldn't be trampled. Gideon didn't wait for her verbal confirmation. The scarred rogue lunged forward, jaws snapping toward Gideon's throat. The Alpha King did not flinch. In a spectacular, terrifying display of raw supernatural power, Gideon shifted. The transition was instantaneous and brutal. His clothing dissolved as his human form was entirely replaced by a massive midnight black wolf. He was a creature of absolute nightmares, standing significantly taller and broader than any of the feral attackers. Gideon let out a deafening, thunderous roar that physically shook the soaring glass panels of the lobby. He met the rogue leader mid-air, his massive paws slamming into the attacker's chest with the force of a freight train. The impact sent the scarred wolf crashing violently into a decorative pillar. The rogue faction operated with a desperate, starved intensity. They lacked formal training, but their wild, unpredictable strikes made them incredibly dangerous. Gideon's midnight black fur bristled as a rogue managed to graze his flank with razor-sharp claws. The minor scratch began to actively scab over, his regenerative abilities beginning the hours-long healing process, but the sheer disrespect of the strike fueled his majestic rage.
If they think a few uncoordinated scratches will dethrone the Northern Territories, they are profoundly mistaken. Gideon raged internally, his massive jaws snapping shut on an attacker's foreleg. The sickening crunch of bone echoed loudly, dropping the hostile instantly. Yet, the numerical disadvantage remained a severe logistical problem. As Gideon threw the crippled wolf aside, 3 more rogues synchronized a leap toward his unprotected rear flank. He couldn't pivot fast enough to intercept all of them simultaneously. He braced his massive back legs, preparing to absorb the coordinated impact, fully expecting to endure the onslaught entirely alone. He just hoped Layla had utilized the distraction to escape into the shadows. Chapter 23. Layla did not run toward the service elevators. She remained perfectly still by the central fountain, her unblinking stare evaluating the chaotic skirmish unfolding across the polished marble. The air was thick with the scent of roasted coffee beans, worn leather, and the sour tang of the rogue attackers. She watched Gideon, in his magnificent midnight black wolf form, systematically dismantle the frontline hostiles. His raw power was awe-inspiring, yet her pragmatic mind instantly identified the critical flaw in his defense. He was fighting a multi-directional ambush without rear support. 3 feral wolves were currently launching a synchronized strike aimed directly at his unprotected flank. I did not survive a corrupt tyrant just to watch my mate get overwhelmed by a pack of unorganized cowards, Layla thought, a fierce, protective adrenaline entirely overriding any lingering self-doubt. It is time to balance the equation. Layla stepped away from her acrylic clipboard. She didn't hesitate. Embracing her true nature, she triggered her own transformation. The shift was fluid, silent, and incredibly swift. Her dark gray workwear fell away, replaced by the sleek, agile form of a Delta wolf. Her coat was a stunning, shimmering silver that caught the ambient light of the lobby. She was significantly smaller than Gideon, lacking his overwhelming brute strength, but she possessed an unmatched, blistering speed and a brilliant tactical awareness. The 3 rogues descending upon Gideon's blind spot never saw her coming. Layla launched herself across the lobby like a silver missile. She struck the lead attacker horizontally, her shoulder slamming into the rogue's ribs with pinpoint precision. The kinetic impact derailed the hostile's trajectory entirely, sending him skidding wildly across the smooth marble tiles. Before the remaining 2 rogues could process the sudden interception, Layla pivoted flawlessly. She snapped her jaws, tearing into the second attacker's shoulder, effectively disabling his dominant leg. Gideon, sensing the sudden shift in the battle's momentum, spun his massive frame around. His glowing crimson eyes widened in profound shock as he registered the shimmering silver wolf standing defiantly in his previously vulnerable blind spot. She didn't run. She stayed to protect me. Gideon realized, a surge of overwhelming pride and adoration temporarily eclipsing his battle fury. My beautiful, fiercely independent equal. Layla offered a sharp, communicative bark, snapping his focus back to the immediate threat. She smoothly repositioned herself, pressing her silver flank securely against his thick, midnight black fur. They stood back to back in the center of the grand lobby, forming an impenetrable, synchronized defensive perimeter. If they want to touch the king, they have to go through the event planner first, Layla mused internally, her silver ears swiveling to track the subtle movements of the remaining rogues. The feral wolves paused, their chaotic advance halted by the sudden display of seamless unity. The contrast between them was visually striking. Gideon's massive, shadowy presence dominated the space, radiating a heavy, intimidating authority. Layla's silver form was a portrait of lethal elegance, her muscles coiled tightly with explosive potential. The scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar blended harmoniously with his rich coffee and leather, creating a unified, overpowering aura that visibly unsettled the feral attackers. They are hesitating. They finally understand the catastrophic error of this ambush, Gideon analyzed, feeling the steady, reassuring warmth of Layla's back against his own. We hold the undisputed advantage. The scarred rogue leader let out a desperate, guttural howl, commanding his remaining fighters to execute a simultaneous, all-out assault. The hostiles surged forward, their claws scraping loudly against the polished stone. Layla bared her teeth, her silver coat gleaming as she prepared to execute her defensive maneuvers with flawless precision. Chapter 24. The grand lobby erupted into a chaotic symphony of snarling jaws and colliding bodies. The remaining rogue wolves launched their desperate, coordinated assault, converging on the center fountain from all directions. However, their unrefined aggression was fundamentally useless against a flawlessly synchronized partnership. Gideon moved like a devastating force of nature. He intercepted the heaviest attackers, using his massive midnight black frame to absorb their initial momentum before violently tossing them aside. His raw, overwhelming strength completely shattered their frontline offensive. Simultaneously, Layla operated with blistering tactical efficiency. She didn't attempt to overpower the larger feral wolves. Instead, she used her sleek silver form to outmaneuver them. When a hostile tried to flank Gideon's left side, Layla darted underneath the attacker's guard, snapping her jaws against their vulnerable tendons. Speed and precision will always dismantle brute ignorance, Layla thought fiercely, executing a sharp pivot to dodge a set of snapping jaws. This is merely another logistical problem requiring immediate resolution. The tag team dynamic was incredibly fluid. Whenever Layla drew an attacker's attention, Gideon would immediately blindside the hostile with a crushing blow. Whenever an enemy tried to overwhelm Gideon, Layla would strike their unprotected rear, forcing them to break their assault. They fought not as two separate individuals, but as a single, highly efficient weapon. The scarred rogue leader, realizing his entire faction was being systematically dismantled, made a final desperate gamble. He ignored the Alpha King entirely, launching a vicious surprise attack directly at the smaller Silver Delta, intending to leverage her size against her. He thinks she is the weak link. What a profoundly fatal miscalculation, Gideon observed internally. Not even attempting to intercept the leader, he implicitly trusted his mate's capabilities. Layla saw the scarred beast charging toward her. She did not brace for a direct impact. Instead, she waited until the absolute last possible second. As the massive rogue leapt through the air, jaws wide, Layla dropped low to the polished marble floor. She slid smoothly underneath his flying trajectory, using her upward momentum to strike his exposed underbelly with devastating force. The rogue leader crashed violently onto the hard stone, his breath entirely expelled from his lungs. Before he could attempt to scramble back to his paws, Gideon was there. The massive midnight black alpha pinned the leader to the ground, his heavy paws pressing firmly against the rogue's chest, neutralizing the threat instantly. The remaining conscious hostiles, witnessing their heavily scarred leader completely subdued by the royal couple, immediately ceased their attack. They whined, dropping their bellies to the marble floor in unconditional surrender. The battle was officially over. She is magnificent, an unrivaled queen of the battlefield, Gideon marveled, his glowing crimson eyes reflecting nothing but pure, unadulterated devotion. Layla met his gaze, offering a soft, triumphant chuff. She casually trotted over to the edge of the central fountain, smoothly shifting back into her human form. Her dark gray workwear rematerialized flawlessly. She reached out, retrieving her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard exactly where she had left it. Well, that was certainly an aggressive breach of venue protocol, Layla remarked smoothly, her breathing rapidly returning to normal. She pulled her silver pen from her pocket, clicking it twice. I will need to heavily adjust the final billing to accommodate the replacement of those mahogany doors. Gideon shifted back, his charcoal-toned slacks and white shirt reappearing. He ignored his discarded jacket, gesturing for the arriving venue security teams to take immediate custody of the hostiles. Secure them, Gideon commanded Torin, who stared at the defeated assassins in shock. Gideon turned his full attention back to Layla. The grounding scent of roasted coffee beans mingled victoriously with her fresh apricots. He stepped close, gently taking the acrylic clipboard from her hands and placing it aside. You are truly peerless, Layla, he murmured, pulling her into a fierce embrace, incredibly grateful for their unbreakable partnership. Chapter 25. The grand lobby of Cresthaven Peaks was a chaotic tapestry of splintered mahogany and apprehended assassins. Layla stood near the central fountain, her sensible shoes carefully avoiding the ruined wooden debris. She held her sleek acrylic organizer clipboard, tapping her silver pen against the plastic edge in a rhythmic, soothing motion. If the council attempts to blame my firm for this architectural disaster, I will personally invoice them for my emotional distress, Layla mused quietly, her heart drumming a relentless cadence against her ribs. She was exhausted, yet profoundly victorious. Gideon stood beside her, his white dress shirt bearing a localized crimson stain near his left flank. The minor scratch he had sustained during the skirmish was actively scabbing, strictly adhering to the biological reality that werewolf healing required several hours to completely resolve. He ignored the lingering discomfort entirely, his focus locked on the approaching authorities. "Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this unprecedented violence?" Councilman Eris, a frantic, red-faced supernatural politician, bellowed as he marched into the lobby. His opulent silk robes swished aggressively over the marble. The summit was supposed to be an impenetrable fortress. This bureaucrat slept comfortably through the entire ambush and now demands accountability, Gideon noted, his dark eyes narrowing with intense irritation. He crossed his arms, his royal signet ring catching the harsh overhead lights. The security perimeter was breached by a rogue faction heiress. They intended to eliminate the Northern Crown. Fortunately, my equal and I systematically neutralized the threat. The councilman paused, his gaze darting between the towering king and the pragmatic event planner in her dark gray workwear. "Your equal? You fought them off together. But where is the venue's security detail? We need a comprehensive investigation immediately. This is a catastrophic logistical failure." Layla stepped forward, her piercing gaze effectively pinning the flustered politician in place. She smoothly tapped a command sequence into her customized Summit earpiece while securely clutching her acrylic organizer clipboard. The venue's security detail was actively engaged in locking down the delegate residential wings, an emergency protocol I explicitly initiated, Layla clarified, her tone dripping with crisp professionalism. "As for your comprehensive investigation, I have just transmitted the high-definition security footage directly to the council's encrypted server. It captures the entire coordinated ambush within the grand lobby, clearly identifying the hostiles before they could disable the interior feeds. Let him try to dispute irrefutable digital evidence," Layla thought, a spark of triumphant satisfaction warming her chest. Numbers and video feeds never lie. Eris blinked at his buzzing communicator, utterly disarmed by her meticulous preparation. "I see. The council will review this footage promptly. We must ensure the summit's reputation remains unblemished in the press." "The summit is a resounding triumph," Gideon declared, his resonant voice leaving zero room for debate. He reached down, picking up his discarded charcoal-toned suit jacket from the marble floor. He draped it casually over his uninjured arm. "The treaties are signed, the delegates are securely isolated, and the hostiles are currently being transported to the northern detention facilities by my lead liaison, Torrin." The councilman nodded hurriedly, thoroughly intimidated by the Alpha King's unyielding authority, and retreated toward the temporary administrative offices to salvage his own political narrative. Gideon turned to Layla, the tension in his sharp jawline softening instantly. The rich scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather wrapped around her, providing a comforting anchor amidst the lingering chaos of the lobby. "You possess a remarkably intimidating presence when you wield that clipboard," Gideon murmured, his dry sense of humor finally resurfacing. "Bureaucracy is an incredibly potent weapon when applied correctly," Layla replied, a genuine smile breaking through her professional facade. She pressed 2 fingers to her customized Summit earpiece, checking the internal frequencies. "Now, I just need to await my brother. He is undoubtedly speeding back from the supply warehouse right now." Chapter 26. The tires of the plum-colored sedan squealed loudly as Cody violently parked the vehicle near the venue's loading dock. He scrambled out, his secondary earpiece buzzing with the frantic aftermath of the venue-wide lockdown. He sprinted through the staff corridors, the heavy brass master set of warehouse keys clanging noisily against his hip. "I left her alone. I let her isolate me to protect my cowardly pride, and now the entire lobby is a war zone." Cody agonized silently, a cold wave of profound guilt washing over his lively features. He burst through the swinging service doors and skidded to a halt at the edge of the grand lobby. His jaw dropped. The shattered mahogany doors were a glaring testament to the sheer violence that had occurred. However, sitting calmly on the edge of the central fountain was Layla, her dark gray workwear perfectly intact, conversing quietly with the Alpha King. "Layla!" Cody shouted, sprinting across the marble. Layla stood up immediately, her scent of fresh apricots and rain-washed cedar blooming with genuine relief. She caught her younger brother in a fierce, reassuring hug. "I am completely fine, Cody," Layla promised, patting his back before stepping away. She retrieved her acrylic organizer clipboard from the fountain ledge. "The rogue faction is contained. The security footage is safely in the hands of the council." Cody looked at Gideon. He noticed the drying crimson stain on the king's white dress shirt, indicating a recent, actively scabbing injury. "You fought them, both of you, and I was organizing premium tablecloths on the other side of the city." He looks entirely devastated by his perceived failure, Gideon realized, a gentle wave of empathy replacing his usual stoicism. He is fiercely loyal to his sister, an incredibly rare trait in modern packs. "Your tactical reassignment was my specific directive," Layla stated firmly, tapping her silver pen against her clipboard to command his attention. "By locking down the off-site facilities the moment the emergency broadcast triggered, you ensured our firm's entire inventory remained untouched. You performed your logistical duties flawlessly." "You don't have to protect my feelings, Layla. I am a beta. I should have been here to defend my family," Cody insisted, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He needs a monumental distraction before he spirals into an endless pit of self-recrimination, Layla decided, her pragmatic mind pivoting instantly to a long-term solution. "Actually, Cody, your flawless management of the supply warehouse today proved a highly significant point," Layla countered, her tones shifting into a formal, authoritative register. "I have recently acquired some rather intensive, long-term commitments in the Northern Territories." She gestured smoothly toward Gideon, who offered a subtle, deeply affectionate nod. The royal signet ring gleamed as he rested his hand gently on the stone ledge. "Running the daily operations of this firm will require a director who intimately understands our specific brand of event planning," Layla continued, looking her brother directly in the eyes. "I am officially handing you the operational reins of the company, Cody. You are the new logistics director." Cody blinked, completely stunned. The heavy brass keys in his hand suddenly felt like a monumental symbol of unparalleled trust. You are giving me the firm? The empire you built from absolute nothingness?" "She is stepping away from her fortress to build a life with me," Gideon thought, a profound sense of awe swelling in his chest. "I will ensure she never regrets this decision." "I'm promoting the most capable man I know," Layla corrected, a bright, radiant smile illuminating her face. "I will still handle the primary contracts, but the day-to-day operations are entirely yours. Now please go to the office and release Spike. The domestic feline has been locked in there for hours, and if he shreds my velvet armchair, I am deducting the replacement cost directly from your newly augmented salary." Cody let out a shaky, incredulous laugh, the crushing guilt finally dissipating. He pulled his sister into one last tight embrace. "I won't let you down, Layla. I promise." As he hurried off toward the office corridors, the future suddenly looked remarkably bright for the severed siblings. Chapter 27. The following morning, the Cresthaven Peaks Grand Auditorium was packed with the remaining supernatural dignitaries. The closing ceremony was typically a tedious affair of polite applause and endless bureaucratic speeches. Layla stood poised near the front row, her dark gray workwear impeccably pressed, holding her sleek acrylic clipboard. "My firm survived a territorial tyrant and a rogue assassination attempt in less than 48 hours," Layla mused quietly, a profound sense of accomplishment steadying her pulse. A simple closing ceremony should be delightfully mundane. Gideon stepped up to the polished wooden podium, looking devastatingly regal in a tailored, deep navy suit woven with subtle silver threading. The minor scratch on his flank had already completely healed overnight, strictly adhering to his accelerated biology. The royal signet ring caught the bright stage lights as he adjusted the microphone. Esteemed delegates, Gideon's rich, resonant voice echoed across the silent room. This summit has proven the undeniable necessity of unity. We have faced unprecedented challenges, yet we emerged substantially stronger. He paused, his dark eyes locking directly onto Layla. The comforting scent of roasted coffee beans and worn leather drifted over the front rows. However, the Northern Territories will no longer navigate these challenges alone. I have found my mate. Layla,
The brilliant architect of this summit, will stand beside me as your queen.
a collective gasp rippled through the auditorium. The supernatural community was fiercely entrenched in archaic hierarchies. Murmurs of shock rapidly escalated into a chaotic hum of disjointed conversations, the delegates completely bewildered by the sudden announcement. Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. An elderly traditionalist from the eastern sector objected, standing up abruptly. His silver hair shook with indignation. She is a free Delta, a logistics coordinator without a formal pack lineage. The Northern Crown requires a leader of profound dominant standing, not a severed event planner. They simply cannot fathom a world where a woman's intellect is valued higher than her magical pedigree, Layla noted internally, her sharp eyes fixing coldly on the complaining traditionalist. She didn't flinch. She simply waited. Gideon did not roar. He did not release a suffocating alpha aura to force the room into submission. Instead, he leaned forward, his expression transforming into a mask of lethal, quiet authority. You speak of dominance as if it merely requires a loud voice and a magical bloodline, Gideon countered smoothly, his tone slicing through the auditorium's tension like a sharpened blade. When assassins breached this venue last night, Layla did not cower. She transformed into a silver weapon and systematically dismantled a rogue faction to protect my blind spot. The auditorium fell completely silent. The delegates exchanged stunned glances, realizing the pragmatic event planner had actively participated in the high-stakes combat. She is a masterful tactician who rebuilt an empire from nothing, Gideon continued, his voice echoing with absolute, unwavering devotion. She outmaneuvers territorial rivals with logistical penal codes, and she navigates chaos with unparalleled grace. She is my equal in every conceivable metric. He is defending my intellect and my spirit, not just our biological bond, Layla realized, a brilliant flutter of joy warming her chest. He truly sees the woman behind the clipboard. Gideon stepped away from the podium and walked directly down the short staircase to the auditorium floor. He stopped in front of Layla, offering his hand. Any faction that questions the legitimacy of my queen is welcome to formally challenge her logistical prowess or her silver claws, Gideon declared to the silent room. I guarantee you will lose on both fronts. Layla smiled, sliding her hand into his. She held her acrylic clipboard securely in her other arm, refusing to abandon her professional identity. As they stood united before the stunned council, it was abundantly clear that the Northern Territories were entering a magnificent, progressive new era. Chapter 28. The cool evening breeze swept across the expansive private balcony of the King's Summit Suite, carrying the fragrant scent of blooming night jasmine. Layla leaned comfortably against the ornate stone railing, her dark gray slacks shifting slightly in the wind. The summit was officially concluded, the logistics firm was successfully transferred to Cody, and Cresthaven Peaks was finally serene. I have successfully managed 300 supernatural delegates and an assassination attempt, yet moving to a royal palace feels like my most daunting logistical challenge yet, Layla thought, a quiet, amused smile playing on her lips. Gideon stepped onto the balcony, holding 2 crystal glasses of a luxurious, sparkling vintage. He handed one to Layla, the gentle brush of his fingers sending a familiar spark of electricity through her. The rich aroma of roasted coffee beans and worn leather immediately grounded her spiraling thoughts. I retrieved the Northern Crown from the secure travel vault, Gideon mentioned casually, leaning against the stone railing beside her. He looked out over the glittering city lights. I must present it to the High Council tomorrow morning before our departure. He is attempting to sound entirely casual, but his pulse is drumming a frantic rhythm, Layla observed internally, her steady gaze catching the subtle tension in his sharp jawline. He is preparing a grand, romantic gesture. Gideon set his glass down on a small patio table. He turned to fully face her, taking both of her hands in his. The royal signet ring felt pleasantly cool against her skin. "Layla," Gideon began, his deep voice thick with genuine emotion. "For decades, I believed the crown was a solitary burden. I assumed I would forever navigate the treacherous waters of politics entirely alone. But then I found a fiercely independent woman hiding under a solid oak desk." Layla chuckled softly, the memory of their absurd first encounter feeling like a lifetime ago. "It was a highly tactical retreat, Your Majesty." "It was the most profound moment of my life," Gideon corrected gently, his dark eyes shining with absolute reverence.
You challenge me. You protect my blind spots, both on the battlefield and in the council chambers. I want to spend the rest of my days ensuring you never have to fight for your independence again. I want to give you the world." He turned toward the small patio table, preparing to officially present the ancient, beautifully crafted crown from its velvet box, as a symbol of their shared reign. Gideon blinked. He frowned, his hands hovering over the table where he had placed the artifact just moments before. The velvet presentation box was entirely empty. "Is there a logistical issue, Gideon?" Layla inquired, her eyebrows raised in mild amusement. Before the Alpha King could answer, a soft, rhythmic clinking sound echoed from the shadowed doorway of the suite. Spike the domestic cat sauntered onto the balcony, his tail held high in an expression of absolute feline triumph. Clamped firmly between his teeth was the invaluable, jewel-encrusted northern crown. The ancient artifact dragged slightly against the tiles as the cat paraded his ultimate prize. This animal possesses a genuinely terrifying level of stealth, Gideon realized, utterly bewildered by the feline's audacity. He bypassed a secure travel vault to steal a monarchy. "Spike," Layla sighed, her professional demeanor fracturing into pure, unadulterated laughter. The melodious sound echoed brightly under the stars. "That does not belong in your secret stash under the office sofa." Gideon stared at the cat, then back at his fiercely pragmatic, brilliantly witty mate. A rich, booming laugh escaped his chest, washing away the serious tension of his ruined romantic speech. The Alpha King of the Northern Territory shook his head, officially accepting that his predictable, stoic life was over. He walked forward to bribe the feline thief, entirely ready for the magnificent, chaotic future awaiting them. The end. Quick favor, don't go anywhere yet. If you thought Layla was brave for trying to hide from the Alpha King under a 300-pound desk, wait until you meet the heroine in this next story on your screen. She doesn't just hide from alphas, she actively ruins their day in the most chaotic way possible. You have to hear this next disaster unfold. Click the video on your screen right now. It is unhinged, it's spicy, and it's waiting for you. See you over there.